Hi, my name is Ken Asterson. I am, people would call it citizen science. I do have a master's degree in science and subject for PhD program, but got distracted in industry. The reason I'm putting together this video is very simple. The long COVID caught it on NPR today, and I'll toss a clip in a few minutes. And I listened to them and said, okay, excuse me, we've been down this pathway before. And by being down this pathway before, I mean the same post-infection syndrome has been on the books and has been investigated ad nauseum for literally decades with with no progress. Um, Chronic fatigue syndrome is what I actually had once upon a time, got over it, I actually had a couple of relapses, got over it, and from that, and reading literally everything out there about it, ended up coming up with a model which seems to work and has worked for other people with long COVID. The problem is it is not a model which results in a prescription drug to be produced to treat long COVID, nor does it reuse or doesn't reuse many existing medications. But so and it doesn't have such wonderful brilliance maker. It's basically very old school. So I have a side which I've had up for uh, one form or another for 25 years. I've been involved with post-viral syndrome for 25 years. And the model that ended up being is the same model which
But millions of Americans are still living with long COVID. That's a catch-all term for COVID symptoms lasting at least 3 months after testing positive. Symptoms can vary from person to person, but they range from mild to severe to physically disabling. Recently, Health Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. kicked off new efforts to address long COVID with a roundtable discussion with doctors, researchers, and patient advocates.
we see for long COVID. Now, over on my site, microbiomeprescription.com, I assembled from the literature, from PubMed studies and literature things. For example, I have long COVID here, and I have here a link saying, okay, what bacteria or shifts have been reported in clinical study with people suffering from long COVID? Let's see what shifts we see. Oh, there's we see some goes higher, bacteria higher, some goes lower. But wait a minute. It goes on endlessly and endlessly and endlessly and endlessly. And those are things which have been found statistically significant in the study of microbiome with people with long COVID. What does that say? Long COVID is a complicated microbiome dysfunction, not a single bug or something to be treated with. And the catch is every individual will, because every individual microbiome before they get COVID, long COVID is distinct. The post-COVID long COVID microbiome is also distinct. In other words, it's not a simple idea for medicine, one pattern that we can find a single cure and fix everything and fix all. No, it falls apart. So this is basically what the medical literature has. Now, I actually go on one step further because I ended up many years back creating a upload site and analysis site which has layers of tuning to help people with microbiome dysbiosis or the gut bacteria that goes through. Now, I have literally 5 or 6 thousand samples there, of which approximately 450 samples are from people with long COVID. So besides this study, which is there, we have a different set of studies of people with long COVID. And if you go over to long COVID, long horror, we see we have 417 here. And here I have with ppb 0.001, and we can see all the bacteria. We have 143 bacteria association. We have enzymes. That is the bacteria in the stomach produces enzymes. If those enzymes get out of whack, people have problems. Often people will take enzymes to help with digestions, and there are a lot of different enzymes. We found at P001, one chance in 1,000, we find 178 bacteria shifts which are too high or too low. And here a few of those are low. In general, as you can see, majority of the issues are not enough certain enzymes being produced because the bacteria producing those enzymes have been diminished. We also can look at the compounds that are being produced, and we have 268 compounds. Again, we have a few compounds being too high, but most of it being too low. In other words, we have 240 items where we want to supplement with particular compounds. If we could get those compounds as a supplement, which actually will get into the gut. And we actually ended up having an interesting one modeling the enzyme. We find that one particular probiotic, E. coli, which is available in Germany, called Mutaflor, is the one that has the biggest potential impact. And if we look down the list of other known bacteria which are in development, whatever, everything else, all the common bifidobacterium, lactobacillus, just don't have much punch for correcting these things. The Mutaflor, the E. coli initially does, and I know from personal experience with chronic fatigue syndrome and seeing other people with chronic fatigue syndrome, that little probiotic has a tremendous amount of kicking power. It is available from Canada and from Germany and in Australia. It was available in the US for a short period of time, and there's complexity with it being banned from the market, which is unfortunate. Now, if we go down, we see more items there, and so we have that being one. Now, we did a look at the same information a second way. Oh, oops. No, wrong one. I'm going to pause for a second. Now, we end up having an interesting situation because we find these bacteria are there, but the problem is we have a horrendous lack of standardization with microbiome testing. Scott Jackson, who were used to head the National Institute of Science and Technology, has written and voiced great concern about basically every microbiome test process, and there are dozens, literally dozens, or actually to quote him, you take a microbiome sample, you process it through a lab equipment that produces a digital file. That digital file, depending on which piece of software you put it through, will come up with 92 different answers. I've seen that actually because I have taken some of my own samples and pushed through different processing, and absolute horrendous disagreement. So one of the problems and which I've seen here is that when you go through and you look at things, you find that different processing companies report different bacteria shifts, which means, wait a minute, we really don't know if this bacteria shift is significant or not significant if using anything besides the Ombre lab or besides the Ubiome lab or besides the Biomocyte lab. And we can go and calculate enzymes, and what we have is we have the same thing because different bacteria means our enzyme estimates are different, and we're one big pain. And we go down there now. We go through, and something which I ended up doing is I went through and said, okay, we have 4 different labs, all producing 4 different things which are inconsistent, but is there a consistency across all the labs from all these 450 people processing different labs? And the answer is yes. We have 37 metabolites are abnormal across all, regardless of which labs you use. 37, and these are the things which needs to be adjusted. Now, what those are the net, and now we have what the producers are, we have those consumers. So in other words, we know we have a list, we can expand that out to look at, for example, D-ribose is one of the things that's significant. And D-ribose for chronic fatigue syndrome supplement has been shown to be very effective for a majority of people. In other words, a lot of the things listed here, I know from chronic fatigue syndrome, are things that will help a percentage of people with chronic fatigue syndrome. This is not the magic pattern that every person with long COVID will happen, but it does agree with what we're discovering with what has been discovered in clinical studies to help with chronic fatigue syndrome. And so the result is we have agreement. So we now know what to do. But the problem is, how do we go about correcting it? Ideally, by correcting the microbiome, but to correct the microbiome, we have the problem of lack of standardization, which is why I tend to advocate a UK firm, biomosite.com, is the preferred site for testing with long COVID because we have a lot of samples from them. We have the bacteria association there, and working on those bacteria associations, you have a very good chance of being successful. Okay, now how do I know it's successful? I'll show you from actual um, samples uploaded. My training is in statistics and operations research, and I've done it professionally for a number of years, including for Microsoft, Amazon, Starbucks. So I'm well experienced with data. One of the things I did was, once I had enough data, I was able to build predictors. And the result is when a new sample gets uploaded, the predictor goes to it and basically gives what the top particular um, symptoms which are predicted from the microbiome and shown to the person, and they go down and they just simply tick off the ones they have. We have about 400 symptoms listed, and they tick off the ones they have. And this particular one is a sweet one because the top 10 were all yes, 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 I have, including age, correctly predicting a person's age from the microbiome. As I said, I tend to have very advanced statistical methods and very non-conventional ones, and which is why I'm working with several companies for them to make use of the technology which I developed. Okay, now, so that's it. But now the comes the question is, okay, we are able to identify bacteria to be altered for a specific microbiome test, key thing. So we generate suggestions based on PubMed data again, strictly PubMed data. Person goes, tries the symptoms, tries the suggestions, and comes back in 2 months or 3 months and gets retested. Some often they will report, yes, they have noticed an improvement of some symptoms, but the question is that's not objective. Being a mathematics-oriented person, I want objective. So I basically say, okay, here are my predictors. Let's look at the new sample and the old sample and see how the predictors change. And what we have here is we have the old samples and the new samples. And you can see, in this case, every single predictor went down. In other words, the bacteria associated with each one of these symptoms has decreased in terms of the magnitude, which to me is very convincing evidence that the expert system that generates the suggestions for how to improve the microbiome is actually working. And in general, I've seen this pattern in about 95 to 98% of people who have done it. And that is a wonderfully high hit rate. Again, we have objective measurements. Again, come back, they put a new sample in, they get a new set of suggestions for the next course correction, and do it again and have people come back for 5 times in a row, and there's been constant improvement over the 5 samples. So to be long and to short, long COVID, from my perspective, from the evidence I'm seeing from PubMed studies, is a microbiome dysfunction in terms of microbiome samples uploaded by individuals who report long COVID. I also see the pattern, but also because I have data from 3 or 4 different labs in high quantities, I'm able to go and take a look at those 4 things in comparison and isolate out the confusion caused by lack of standardization of microbiome tests. And when I do that, we found that certain enzymes or compounds are off, and the compounds that are off are also some of the same ones which have been found effective for chronic fatigue syndrome, which is very much akin to there. So the long and the short of it is we have a likely probable treatment protocol for long COVID, and that is microbiome manipulation And that is where the rub comes in because most physicians have no idea how to handle a complicated microbiome dysbiosis. Yes, they know how to correct H. pylori. They know how to correct typhus, single or typhoid, single bacterial infections they can handle. What we are talking about is in some cases having to adjust 30, 40, 50 different bacteria at one time. And considering negative cross interaction from one bacteria to another. Fortunately, doing expert system has been part of my academic teaching load, and my also have done it professionally, which meant I ended up knowing how to build expert system that would do it, and it's up there, and it's free for individual use. So I'm not trying to sell something and simply say, hey, it's up there. Okay, now at this point in time, let's get back to a couple other things. Okay, to better illustrate the issue, I went back to the long COVID one. This bacteria, I filter it to one particular lab biome site, mainly because we have more data from them than from anybody else. And we see we have 30 bacteria which are needing to be corrected, to be adjusted, to be persuaded to move in the right direction. Now, we could also go up and actually say, oh, okay, I won't bother raising it. Look at that political that significant, and that significant is done by using chi-square, which is why I get some obscene numbers. Probably done chi-square can be powerful. So we have the particular things there, and we can cascade through. So basically, the solution is okay. Give me the recipe of how diet should be changed to do that, and to provide explicit information about each. So that is the basic dilemma. Here's data from a person with long COVID, and we have what's called a cross-validated suggestions. And basically what we do is we list out the bacteria which are off, and notice by every single bacteria it gives a link to the study which the information comes from. In other words, this is what the literature says. Then down below we actually use long COVID and chronic fatigue syndrome suggestions to see what are items which will or reported to help the conditions and to also help with the um, with correcting the bacteria. So in other words, this is a bacteria we want to do. These are things that will correct these bacteria, and these things also have been shown to help chronic fatigue syndrome or long COVID. And then we actually end up with a backdoor way of dealing with the same thing by using a research project, and we end up identifying which bacteria has the greatest impact, and we see things like lactobacillus or bifidobacterium are relatively low for the impact. And then we go down and we provide things, and of course let's go to the top and simply take a look and say, okay, here's one. And now we see all the literature being cited. And as you can see, post-COVID syndrome is being cited out there. So all literature is assembled for you. Easy report. Again, it's sitting there. It's getting free for individuals to make use of. Now, if you are a lab want to make use of it, or if you are a researcher wants to make use of it, then hey, we are easy to do. If it's a research study alone, then basically it's almost the same condition of lab. It's basically just a small charge on top of your lab costs. And if you're interested in that, we'll just go over and show you where you can get the deal. And this deals with licensing suggestions engine, be it for clinical study or as an add-on to your existing lab. And the link is there, and I will put all those links in the footnotes. So basically that is it. That covers my attitude towards on COVID. Is why I think all of the conventional procedures are going to fall flat on the face, because none of them are going to touch the aspect of correcting a microbiome dysbiosis. Especially because dysbiosis, when you're dealing with 30 or 40 or 50 different bacteria which are out of whack, is not a trivial thing to do, and it's outside of current standard medical knowledge. It is there, but using it is a little bit of a delight. Okay, that's it. Check the notes for how to contact me or the links to various sites. Okay, bye.